Welcome everyone to Aging in Action, and we're so happy to have today with us Taryn Green. Hi, Taryn.
Hi. Thanks
How are you? And our topic today is going to be ableism, which is a term I hadn't heard until maybe last year, and I actually saw read an interview that you had done about ableism, so it was a new word to me. But Taryn, maybe can you tell us just a bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into that topic.
Sure. Yeah, great to be here, and thank you for having me. My name is Taryn Green. I have cerebral palsy, which primarily impacts my fine motor skills and my speech, my voice. I have a BA in English literature and a master's in humanities, and a postgraduate diploma in post-production from Humber College. I currently work at BrokerLink Insurance in their marketing and communications department as a writer and video editor. Um, I also sit on their diversity and inclusion committee as well. So very active within the company. I'm also a mom to a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm a blogger when I have spare time. And I'm also a little free library steward. So I take the time to really curate books for the little library that are specifically by diverse authors, like disabled authors, BIPOC authors, LGBTQ plus authors, so that kind of those voices and perspectives are kind of shared in the community more easily and readily. So that's a little bit of me.
I'm exhausted just listening to it.
Me too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Darren, what is ableism?
So ableism is basically a favoring of non-disabled individuals over those who are disabled. So it's injustice, prejudice, or discrimination solely on the basis of disability. Ableism can come in many forms, including direct, indirect, systemic, internalized, and even microaggressions. It perpetuates the idea that disability is less than and should be excluded. So not usually seen like non-disabled people are or typical abilities are usually seen as superior. So, but I will say that I'm no I'm expert in ableism. I can only share what I know about it from reading about it. I've only actually first learned about it back in mid 2020 when I first started to get more into learn more about disability activism. And that's when I learned about ableism. So I had no idea what it was before then. And I will say too that I can only speak today based on my experiences and how I see my disability. Disability and cerebral palsy is extremely diverse. So it's really important that that you understand that I'm speaking on what I know and what I experience, and that everyone experiences life and their disability differently, and that it's really important to listen to every single voice and perspective, because each one really matters and deserves space to be heard.
Absolutely. So. Yeah.
And I know you're mentioning, your perspective today on the term ableism is from your lived experience, which is a great perspective to kind of touch on so we as a community can learn what ableism is. When Gwen had mentioned, we were going to be recording this episode, I'm going to be honest, I never heard the term ableism. So I'm Googling it and I'm like, what is that? What does that mean? And I guess based off of your lived experience, if you don't mind kind of touching on it, why is it important to become less ableist? I mean, let's fight ableism, right? Why is that important in your perspective?
I think ableism has almost like a superiority complex in a way, I guess, for lack of better words. That this disability is seen as negative, right? So whereas I like to think that my disability is, um, sure, disability can be challenging, um, and it is often is a challenge, but I think it's also provides a lot of gifts, and it can be seen as something that is different. It's part of one's identity, right? So I think it's important when trying to combat ableism to really see disability as part of one's identity, just as your hair color or how other I guess skin color, things like that, right? So it's really important to see it that way, that we all move differently, we all speak differently, we all think differently, right? And disability is just actually, it really can provide a new perspective on life, on the workplace. um it really can open boxes and think outside the box. People who are disabled are often very creative, have to think of things in a different way, because often society puts up these barriers and we have to figure out how to navigate around them. So I think, um looking at disability, sorry,
That's okay.
I think looking at disability as a way that it's like in a nuanced way that can really benefit in being an addition to society instead of a negative thing, right? So
Yeah, you had mentioned society and barriers. Can you touch on that a little bit more about what barriers you think we have in our society, just based off your lived experience?
there's quite a lot.
Okay.
Um, like in my personal experience, I mean, I don't use a wheelchair. I can walk, run, jump. So I'm relatively like able-bodied. But in my experience as a person that has speech impediment, I think there's a lack of knowledge around, hearing different voices on the phone. Especially in the workplace, it can be a challenge. To people often say things like, "Oh, just pick up the phone and call them." And for me, in my experience, picking up the phone and making a phone call is not just a simple task. It's speaking is very mental and very physically demanding for me. I'm constantly, so there's a word called internalized ableism, and that's when I've taken ableism and I've internalized it and made it almost like this voice in my head that, my voice is different. No one's going to understand me. And those kind of negative thoughts. And so those go through my head before I have to make a phone call, especially with someone I don't know who doesn't know me. I'm very nervous, and it takes a lot of mental work to, kind of get myself to the point to make that phone call. Public speaking events.
You're on a TV show.
This kind of form, to be honest, is actually pretty accessible. For me, even though I am able to drive and move without any accessibility tools, I still find that when I have to stand up to speak and deliver, everyone says, stand up and speak, and your voice will project, right? In my case, I personally feel like maybe there is a difference. I haven't tested it, but I feel like internally when I stand up and speak, I get this like a feeling in my stomach that I feel like I have to project, and I feel like my voice suffers because of that. So actually sitting down for me to speak and having a table in front of me with notes is probably more comfortable than it were for me if I were to stand up to speak. So ableism tells us that standing up to speak is better,
Mhm.
but when actuality, everyone we need, if we want to speak effectively and the best that we can, we need to listen to what people need in order to provide the best for them, right? So thinking about, instead of saying like it has to only be this one way, maybe there's another way, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
being very innovative in disability, go back to the previous question, disability can be very innovative and can really be the seed for innovation within communities, within workplaces, right? So I think that's you know really opening your mind and allowing to change your perspective around what is supposed to be the way and all the other ways it can be as well.
For sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that definitely answers my question and more. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of the things in that when we were talking before, Taryn, that all of us at some point in our life will have some type of disability, even your eyesight, your hearing, you walk with a cane some days, and that the disabled, I'm looking from your notes, the disabled is the only marginalized group that we can all become a part of. And that's why accessibility is so important. And that really struck a chord with me because it's absolutely true. You can't change your skin color or that sort of thing, but you will become part of that group at some point in our lives. All of us will.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's really important that we really change our mind around accessibility and how important it is to create accessible communities. Partially accessible is not accessible, right? And there's a lot of aspects to really think about when creating an accessible community. And I think oftentimes what sometimes is missed is bringing the disabled community to the table when making those decisions. So that voice needs to be there. And I think that's probably the biggest way that we can combat ableism is by always including voices, kind of like what you're doing with me right now today, being present here, bringing the voices to the table that are making the decisions, that are creating the policies, and in that way, you're not, you know, you have that voice and you're seeing that different perspective and saying, oh yeah, I didn't think that maybe this place needs a ramp or a accessible doorway, or maybe we need closed captioning on the TV show or other kind of things that you wouldn't think about, right? The other
Yeah.
example,
No, I was just going to say, and whenever I hear the word ramp, I always there's a cartoon that I saw one time, and it was, kids standing, and it was snowy. The custodians sweeping off the steps for kids to go in, and he said he'll do the ramp after he does the steps. And the one guy says, "Well, clean the ramp, and we all can come inside." And that just also I can visualize that
Yeah,
picture,
that's powerful.
right? And I think that if we make things better for the disabled, we're all better for it, right? We all have the accessibility. So there's certain things that, and I've told you too about my nephew being quadriplegic, and I guess that makes me more sensitive or heightened awareness to accessibility and what everybody, who we say quote unquote disabled, what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
yeah, it's true. I think the other thing that I wanted to mention to just to really kind of bring home the point about accessibility is the example I often use that often really sticks with a lot of people is eyeglasses. So eyeglasses are an accessibility tool because can you imagine going to work and forgetting your glasses? Would you be able to drive there?
No.
Would you be able to write? Would you be able to read?
I don't think I could get out of the room.
That kind of thing, right? And with your employer, most importantly, with your employer expect you to work without your eyeglasses, right? So let's think about that in terms of other accessibility tools. How can we make the world accessible in a way that all accessibility tools, walkers, canes, wheelchairs, hearing devices, visual aids, how can we make it so that it's so commonplace and even in some cases fashionable, like our eyeglasses are, so that we are able to just be right? Like disability is not the exception, really. We need to really see it as just part of society, no different than anyone else. No one should have to explain anything about disability. It's just having a chance to exist and just be, and just because we're all different, right? So
Taryn, one of the things you had mentioned in your summary when we were reading it previously in the bio, which I have to say I was floored. Kudos to you. You mentioned engaging individuals, and through your lens and your perspective, have you seen improvement with boards, committees where we're engaging? Individuals are starting to participate more and bring a voice within the community?
It's a good question. I personally sat on a board for a number of years, and so I had my daughter. So and that board alone was very open to the many perspectives and voices that were at the table. So kudos to them. I think too, even within the company that I work for and previous companies, I think there is a really, especially in the last 2-3 years, a really big focus on diversity and inclusion. So I think a lot of companies are seeing now the importance that diverse perspectives can bring, right? So again, it goes back to like innovation. Like everyone sees things differently because of their lived experience. And so when you can bring that lived experience to the table and bring that perspective, you can really change and innovate a company and make it better. And then also the clients can see that they're represented there too, right? So yes, disabled people are actually, I would say the stat, there's a pretty impressive stat that says the disabled community and their buying power in Canada is like, I feel like it's like $50 million. And I think too that businesses that make accessibility a priority for their business, it's good business, right? So I think there is a movement in that direction, and definitely again being asked to speak about this, and not just me, like anyone, like really asking the perspective, not just anyone on the street, mind you, but with people that like Gwen's nephew, right? Like listening, taking the time to really listen, actively listen to their perspective, how they live their life, what their stories are, can really help to change the way that society lives and operates.
Now, based off of your personal opinion, someone who might be watching the show, maybe like some of us, our co-hosts, and be like, I never heard of that term before, and I don't really, comprehend how to even recognize, if I'm being ableist. Is there any resources that you would want our audience to maybe go towards to learn more about ableism, recognize what that means in themselves and in other people, so we can become advocates, right? And learn and grow, because education's power. And that's the only way we're going to know how to kind of stop it, right? And be less, I don't want to say ageist because that's not the right word, but not participate in ableism, right? So is there any resources Any direction you can give us and our audience as we move forward to educate ourselves?
There is a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of books. I'm actually going to put together a page that you can share, a link that you can share with your audience that has books, podcasts, watching movies and TV shows where the actor is actually has the disability and not someone non-disabled playing a disabled role. So it's really important that we see representation. For example, Netflix Special, there's a show called Special on Netflix, played by a man who has cerebral palsy and is gay, and such a great show. I watched it and it was so, for me, impactful on how to like had to see myself represented like in as a star in a TV show. I'd never seen that before, right?
Yeah.
Breaking Bad is the other TV show that has a person with cerebral palsy in the show, right? So it's very, very weird too, but also like, oh, this is amazing.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cultural ableism, right? What our
Yes.
media, yeah, what
Very,
our
very difficult to for him to even get the show, right? Like,
Yeah.
so yes, there's a lot of examples out there of how you can really, it's important to really do your research on disability, on ableism. It's really up to the viewer, to each individual to really do your own research. So you can't, it's not up to the average person on the street that appears to have a disability to educate you, right? So seek out, find the resources, find the people like myself who are willing to share, who are willing to talk about it, and are willing to answer questions about it. But please, not as acceptable to go up to someone that you don't know and ask questions either. Like, and really anything. So yeah, just really seek out, do the research, and really remember this term, nothing about us without us. I think that's a very powerful phrase to take away with. Nothing about us without us. So that kind of go back to bringing the disabled voices and perspectives to the table whenever you can, whenever it involves them, really. And know that they have a voice, they have a perspective, they have thoughts, like they can contribute to society, so it's and just do your research, start typing in ableism, follow people on social media that are activists. That's where I learned the majority of what I know now. That's how I learned about ableism. So, and ableism is a tough thing to really grasp, I find. But it's so, because it's so pervasive in society. It's everywhere, everywhere.
How are we making out for time, Nikki?
Few minutes left. And you know what? And I think that's a good kind of segue into any final thoughts that you would want to share that maybe we didn't touch on in this episode with our viewers before we do conclude our episode. We want to make sure that we get everything you were hoping to talk about discussed today.
Okay. I think the main thing is probably like, don't think of disability as negative. We have to be able to say the words disabled, disability. Try to stay with euphemisms like handicapped or differently abled or special needs, even, because the more that we can say, be comfortable with disability, the less stigmatized it is in society. And we don't want to be separating ourselves from disability. We want to understand it and become normalized, right? So try to just, it's different for everyone. Everyone's had a different journey in their life when they do have a disability, but just know that if you have a disability, you have a space, you deserve to take up space in this society, and that your perspectives and values and opinions matter, and they're worth something. And make sure your voice or how you tell your story is heard, because it belongs. We deserve to hear it. So
Thank you so much, Taryn,
Thank
for
you.
joining us today,
thank you for having me.
providing some of your lived experience. I think we've started the conversation today, encouraging our viewers to do their research, and so we can all really learn more about ableism. So thank you so much for joining us today and helping our community age in action.